books, TV appearances, and making life uncomfortable for homophobic members of Congress. Not all of them yet, but Dan is young and I have a great deal of faith. Dan is also the founder of the It Gets Better project, which is directed at helping LGBTQ youth who feel alone, bullied, and scared. The project's gotten a lot of attention and has saved lives. For me, it's one of those ideas that I look at and say, there is absolutely nothing that I could do to improve on this idea. Absolutely nothing at all. It's a perfect idea. The fact that he used our product to do it is icing on the cake. And all the YouTube people here, woo! I also want to welcome Terry Miller, Dan's husband, and one of their sons to dads. Terry's lived a more private life than Dan, but we have to remember that behind every successful man is another man. He's been an integral part of the It Gets Better project at every step of the way, the co-founder, co-editor of the It Gets Better book, and he's here with us today, and I'm sure he'll answer your questions if you've got any. Dan's here to talk about the project, the book, and anything else he feels like. And then there'll be Q&A. But first, a word from our sponsor.
High school was bad. I was obviously gay, and some kids didn't like that, and I did get harassed. What I'd love you to take away from it is that however bad it is now, it gets better, and it can get great.
And it's important for adults to reach out to kids and share our stories so that they can picture futures for themselves that are worth sticking around for.
Okay, little ones, here's the first thing you need to know.
You are perfect and wonderful exactly as you are.
You're not alone.
There are a ton of us out here in this world.
We love you without even knowing you.
There's art to be made, and there are songs to be sung.
So hold on. Look at me, 80 years old. It gets better with age.
Listen to me.
It gets better.
It gets better.
It gets better.
It does get better.
So much better.
You'll be fine, partner.
Your life can be amazing, but you have to tough this period of it out, and you have to live.
Dan Savage.
It's so wonderful to be here, and I want to start just first by thanking Google for that ad campaign and for so thoroughly getting the It Gets Better project. When we got the call and we were told that Google wanted to create an ad campaign and they wanted to use It Gets Better, we went to the meeting. We were really dubious, we have to say. Terry and I both were just a little wary. And we watched the commercial, and it's just so clear that everyone here understands what the It Gets Better project is and how it worked and what it means. And we watched the ad, the original cut, and instantly said yes. So thank you all so much. The whole goal of the campaign all along has been to reach kids, and we are, with Google's help now, Google's help every step of the way, reaching kids. Anyway, I wanted to just say a few words about the idea and how it got started and what it means and what it's accomplished, and then Terry will join me for the Q&A because he is the co-founder of the It Gets Better project and the much more telegenic presence than I am. The It Gets Better project, people keep saying that it began after, oh my God, there's shirtless people playing softball. I think we have to end here because I'm going to be very distracted by this. It gets better, obviously, in so many ways. people keep saying that it began in response to a national outcry. And really, the It Gets Better project began before that horrible month of September of last year continued to grind on, before Tyler Clemente's suicide, before Seth Walsh, before Asher Brown. It was really Billy Lucas's suicide that prompted Terry and I to act. Billy Lucas was 15 years old, growing up in Greensburg, Indiana. He may or may not have been gay. He had never come out to anyone, but he was a target and bullied for being perceived to be gay by his peers, who called him a faggot and beat him up and encouraged him to go home and kill himself. And that's just what he did one day. He went to his grandmother's barn and hanged himself. And his mother found his body. And just as an example of that the internet and social media can be a force for good or a force for evil, his family created a Facebook memorial page for him and his friends to mourn him. And the same bullies at school who had so brutalized this kid went to his Facebook memorial page to mock him in death in this place where his family and friends were going. And I read about that and it really fucking made me mad. And I wrote about it, and somebody went to my blog and left a comment addressing Billy and said, "I wished I'd known you, rest in peace. If I had known you, I would have been able to tell you that things get better." And that phrase stuck in my head, things get better. And I was, last fall as I do, traveling from campus to campus. I go from college to college. They bring me into undue abstinence education in 2 hours, which I can do. And thinking what I really need to do is go from high school to high school and middle school to middle school. But I would never get an invitation to speak at a high school whose principal didn't want to be fired the next morning. And I really need to speak to queer kids, to these bullied 13, 14, 15-year-old, 16-year-old queer kids, but those kids, those gay kids who most need to hear from LGBT adults are least likely to have the kind of parents who would ever allow them to speak to a gay adult, or a lesbian adult, or a bi adult, or a trans adult. The queer kid who most needs to hear from gay adults, LGBT adults, doesn't have the kind of parent who's going to take them to an LGBT youth support meeting, or allow them to attend GSA meetings, even if they're in a school that has a GSA. And so I was just sort of obsessing on that. I would never get an invitation to speak at a high school or middle school, and I would never get permission from the kind of parent whose queer kid most needed to hear from me, to speak to their kid. And why do they need to hear from LGBT adults? Because when a 14-year-old gay kid kills himself or herself, what that kid is saying is, I think, two things. One, that they can't picture a future with enough joy in it to compensate for the pain they're in now. And I seem like such a cynical asshole in Savage Love. I'm really a weepy bag of slop. It's my deepest, darkest secret. And they may know that there are happy, successful, content queer adults out there, but they don't know how you get from being a bullied 14-year-old gay kid to that gay adult. A kid who's at school is bullied because of their race, class, which is kind of bullying that's rarely acknowledged, religion. They go home to family members, adults, same race, same class, same religion, who just by existing are proof that you can get through this, that you can survive it. They probably experienced it themselves. And if you're being bullied for the same reasons your parents were bullied, you can open up to them about what you're being put through, and you can ask for their help. The bullied queer kid goes home to straight parents all too often, and really tragically to straight parents who are all too often participating in the bullying and the harm that it does. LGBT kids 4 times likelier to attempt suicide. If their families are hostile, which is what the religious right advises the families of queer kids to do, if their families are hostile, they're 8 times likelier to attempt suicide. And so I was obsessing about this. I should be going to middle school. I'd never get an invitation. I should speak to queer kids. I would never get permission from their parents. And I was on the train to JFK, and it just occurred to me that in the YouTube era, I was waiting for permission I no longer required, that I could look into a camera and talk to a Billy Lucas now, before he committed suicide, instead of just feeling so much regret after hearing about a Billy Lucas, and tell him that it gets better, and prove it by sharing my life, my joy with him or her. And I called my husband in Canada, boyfriend in America, which is now, the acronym is now HICBAY. I called the HICBAY, Terry, and I said, I have this idea, I want to record a video, I want to call it It Gets Better, I want to launch this thing called the It Gets Better Project. create a YouTube channel and use my column and my podcast to encourage other LGBT adults to jump in and share their joy. And this is a funny thing about Terry. He is an intensely private person. We've been together 17 years, almost, and I've written 2 books about our life together, one about our adopting our son DJ, and one about our decision to marry in Canada, land of the free. And in all those years, he's never given a print interview, never appeared on television, never allowed for the release of a photo of our family. We were offered reality shows about our lives where they wanted to film in our house, and that would never, ever fly with me or Terry. And I would have to tell these TV people, you realize I look at email for a living. It's not good television. So Terry is this intensely private person who had never, ever wanted to be in the spotlight, who married a memoirist. And I called him and said, I want to do this thing, I want to record this video, and I want to do it with you, because you are so much of the joy in my life. And he instantly agreed, which blew my mind, because I expected him to say no, because that's what he usually leads with, whatever the subject. And I flew home, and everyone talks about our It Gets Better video, which you just saw a little piece of, as the first It Gets Better video, which has now been viewed a million plus times. I would have worn makeup and not sat in gray light if I had known, because I'm gray enough. And it's really not the first It Gets Better video. There was an earlier take. We shot one in our house. It was 16 minutes long, and it was, we watched it after we shot it and concluded that any kid who wasn't suicidal before they saw that video was going to be suicidal after they saw that video, because we got it exactly backwards. We spoke for 15 minutes about the bullying that we had both experienced in school, and only for a minute about our joy. And I attribute that to the fact that we're Catholic. And if you're Catholic and God overhears you talking about the good things in your life, he will take them from you. Programming note, Terry isn't Catholic, Terry's Episcopalian, which my grandmother always said is a Catholic who goes to hell. Looks just like Catholicism, but no pope, no heaven, Grandma said. And we recorded the second one. We actually packed up all our video equipment, we went to a bar, we had a drink, and we tried again. When things aren't working out, packing up all your equipment and going to a bar and having a drink is one of the ways it gets better. And we released that video, and our goal was 100. We wanted 100 videos, because we really felt that it was important that when we were going to be sending LGBT kids to this channel to watch these videos, that there be a sample, a representative sample. Not all LGBT people look like us, want the same things that we've gone for in our lives, or have the same religious backgrounds that we have. So it was really important that it not just be one video or 4 videos, that it needed to be lots, because we wanted people of all races, we wanted people of all gender expressions, we wanted people of all walks. We wanted the full diversity of the queer community represented. And the first indication that we had that we'd struck a nerve, that we weren't the only ones out there who would read about a Billy Lucas and feel such regret at not having been able to talk to that kid before, was the first night. We were very foolish and and naive, I guess, about the power of YouTube, because we put the video up and the email at the account was my email at the stranger. And I opened my email that first night, and the responses, just the likes and friend requests and emails, they were coming in so fast that the emails were just pouring down the screen. It was like rain. And my computer crashed. And I thought, I think we'll get 100 videos. Like, that's the kind of response just this one video has gotten. We got 100 videos in about 36 hours. And the It Gets Better project now is, some wonderful folks involved all over the country. We have a board, we're a nonprofit, Blue State Digital got involved. But that first few weeks, it was just me and Terry. And we had invited, when I launched the project, when I talked about it on my podcast and in my column, LGBT adults to make videos and start submitting them, and LGBT kids to go to youtube.com/itgetsbetterproject and watch. And so we felt really obligated to watch every video that we posted to the channel in its entirety, because we didn't want somebody to say the right thing for 4 minutes and then go all ex-gay bullying for 5. And the average length of the videos when they were coming in first was like 12 minutes, 13 minutes. And so in 4 days, we watched 650 videos, just me and Terry. And they were very emotional, and it was hard to watch some of them. And some of them were heartbreaking. I think of the 2 teachers who made a video where they're wearing hats and bandanas over their faces because they can't be publicly out without losing their jobs, and who are holding up flip cards with their statement because they don't want their voices to be recognized. And they're addressing the queer kids in their school where they don't have workplace protection, saying, look around, there's a teacher who'll be on your side. You just have to look for us. We can't be out. We can't look for you. And to watch those videos and just cry. So the 4 days of this, 650 videos, Terry and I, around the clock, watching videos and posting them to the channel. And then we hit 650, which we didn't know when we launched the channel was the maximum number of videos that could be posted to a new YouTube channel. And we hit 650, and we were so relieved. Because it meant we could stop watching videos for a while. We put up a note that said, we've hit the maximum number of videos, more videos are pouring in, we're going to create a mirror site or a standalone website, please keep sending your videos and sending us your links, but we can't approve anymore just now. As soon as we can, we will start loading more people's videos, but please keep them coming. And we shut our computers off and went to bed thinking, oh my God, we can take a break. And we instantly heard from Carol Chen. Are you here, Carol? The next morning, we had an email from a Google employee, a YouTube employee, letting us know they had backdated the can of our YouTube account to 2004, and now we could post 5,000 videos. And we were delighted and touched and crushed and realized at that moment that we needed to expand the project so it wasn't just Terry and me anymore. We needed more people involved. So really Google, since the start, has been involved. Google, since the inception, has been in our corner and looking out for us. We actually have gotten emails in that first month when people noticed that the creation date for the website was 2004, wondering what had happened or what was really going on behind the scenes. And we told them that Google had joined the international homosexual conspiracy on the right side of history. The goal all along wasn't to rack up more videos than anybody else in the world on a YouTube channel. We've been saying for 3 months there are 10,000 videos. There are probably double or triple that now. There are It Gets Better projects in Australia and the United Kingdom. One's being launched in Vietnam. There are It Gets Better projects in Latin America. It's become a worldwide phenomenon. There are many more than 10,000 that have been viewed, many more than 40 million times, which is an impressive number until you realize that Rebecca Black's Friday, Friday, Friday video was viewed 40 million times in a week. But it's still something to be proud of. We were so chuffed by that 40 million numbers, and then we went, what? The goal, though, wasn't to have more videos than anybody else. If we'd only gotten 100 and we'd saved lives, it would have been mission accomplished. That we got so many, including the excellent Google Gagler's video from Made Right Here, that's what gave the project its reach and impact. It was so many people participating. But we saved lives, and we've heard from kids all over the country. And one of the things we did accidentally ended up being, when we created the project, it was my email address, and we said we were about to launch it and say to people, email us your raw video file, we will upload it to YouTube and post it. And the tech people at The Stranger were like, nuh-uh, you're going to crash our email system. Tell people to create their own YouTube accounts, create their own, upload their own videos, send you the link, and we'll post it. And that ended up meaning that just like that first night, I was getting all these emails. Anybody who created a video and posted, they got the emails. They had unwittingly, in some cases, volunteered to do real-time crisis counseling, in some cases, for LGBT kids who'd watched their video and responded to it. And you can go and look at these 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 videos, and you can go into the comments threads, and you can see LGBT kids bullied and alone, reaching out and getting help, getting the support from an online community that they're not getting at home. In the first week of the project, I called my brother Billy, really when it was exploding in the first few days, to say that I remembered that he was more brutally bullied in school than I was. We went to the same middle school together. He's a year and a half older than I am, and there's a sibling between us. We're Catholic, like I said. So he was in 8th grade when I was in 6th grade in the same middle school. And he had it much, much worse than I did. And he was straight, and still is. And I just called him and said, I don't think that as I go on CNN for the 14th time this week to talk about this thing that I've forgotten. And he was a geek and a nerd and a brain, and it was the 70s and he typed his homework. Kids do that now, kids didn't do that then. And a science fiction fan, and just he walked around with that bullseye on him. And he's an English professor at Northwestern University now, he's a really smart dude, and he said the really smart thing. He said, yeah, I had it worse at school. At the end of the day, though, I went home and I had mom and dad. And you didn't. And that's what the project has provided for so many bullied LGBT kids, is a sympathetic adult that they don't have at home right now or at church. So many bullied LGBT kids are bullied at school by their peers. They go home to more bullying from their families, and they're dragged to a church on Sunday where they're told, sometimes more politely, but the message is still, God hates fags. And what the It Gets Better Project has done is reached those kids with adults who are sharing their joy, who are illuminating the path from bullied 14-year-old queer kid to happy, loved, safe, content, gay adulthood. And I want to end this rambling section before we get to the Q&A, which is my preferred format for everything, so I like to rush to it, with an email. Well, two things. First, I want to read a quote from, no, first I want to say this. Sorry. The It Gets Better Project saved lives. That is its ultimate achievement, and that was the goal. The penultimate achievement of the It Gets Better Project is this. The deal culturally for queer people in this country since Stonewall has been this. You're ours to torture until you're 18. Once you're 18, you can do what you want. You can come out, you can move away. If we haven't fucked you up too badly, maybe you can build a life for yourself. There's just one thing you can't do once you turn 18, and that's talk to the kids who are not yet 18 that we are still torturing. In the same schools, in the same churches, in the same malls, in the same suburbs where you were tortured. And if you try to talk to those kids, we're going to accuse you of recruiting, of being a pedophile, of trying to seduce kids into the homosexual lifestyle. And that accusation was so inhibiting that we didn't talk to LGBT kids, in part because we couldn't reach them. And the ones we could reach, the ones who were being dropped off at the gay support group, often didn't need to hear from us. They didn't need it, the need wasn't so desperate. So the ones who most needed to hear from us, we couldn't reach, and there was no way to reach them until YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. And so the It Gets Better Project did is it pulled that old order down and destroyed it forever. This idea, this inhibition, LGBT adults, we can't talk to these kids. Well, we are talking to them now, and they can't stop us anymore. And we can reach the kids whose parents would never take them to the gay youth support group. And that's why I wanted to end with this video, or with this email. I got an email from a 15-year-old lesbian telling me, thanking me, and everyone who's made a video for the project, and letting us know that she'd come out to her family, and it was a disaster. She told her parents she was a lesbian, and they did exactly what the religious right advises parents to do. They threatened to kick her out of the house. 40% of homeless teenagers are LGBT kids who were kicked out or thrown out after they came out or were outed to their families, or even just suspected of being gay by their families. Threatened to throw her out, pushed her into a reparative therapy program at their church, threatened to cut her off financially, cut her off from any contact with her siblings, and so she went back in the closet. She told them what they needed to hear, wanted to hear, that she was not a lesbian, that she was just confused, that she was a tomboy, and the International Homosexual Conspiracy, headed up by Ellen, had led her to believe that that meant she must be a lesbian, but she was wrong. She's not a lesbian. She likes boys, and up went a Justin Bieber poster, which is as close to lesbianism as she's going to get. And I don't say that to disparage effeminate boys. They're my favorite kind. And she wrote to let us know that, to thank us, and she said in her email that she was watching It Gets Better videos in her room, in her bed, under her covers, on her phone, at night. So, we went from, we can't reach these kids. We can't talk to these kids. How do we talk to a queer kid in the closet being abused by their family in a Greensburg, Indiana? We went from there's no way, even if we wanted to reach them, to we are talking to them in their parents' houses, in the middle of the night, under the covers, all 10,000 of us at a time. And I've been saying, long before this email came, I've been saying we're talking to these kids now, your kids now, whether you want us to or not. And this email kind of pulled me up short because she said that the email not only, or the videos, the campaign, were not only giving her hope for her future. She was seeing that there was a future for her, that there were friends out there waiting for her, that she could build a life, and there would be a community of accepting people, including accepting straight people. And that she would be happy, and that she could get through this. She could get through the next 3.5 years in her parents' house. But they weren't just giving her hope for her future, they were giving her hope for her parents, for the people that her parents could become. Because so many of the videos were created by people whose families had the same reaction that hers did, that hers has, and whose families have come around. And she said in this touching email that she now looks at her parents and doesn't see the people they are right now. She sees the people they're going to be in 10 years, and she loves them. And this is because of social media. This is because of YouTube. So thank you for buying YouTube and giving it the bandwidth it needed to accommodate our project and Rebecca Black's video Friday. And everyone who made the video here at Google, where are you? Could you all stand up for a second? Can we have a round of applause for them? Terry and I get to run around the country, and we get to do the book, and we get to get a lot of the credit. And again, I'm sure I've said this already, it has only had the impact it's had because so many other people jumped in and took part. And if it had been 10,000 videos of me and Terry in our dining room, we would have committed suicide. So thank you all for participating. And now, Terry, would you like to join your weepy bag of slop husband in Canada, boyfriend in America up here? So we can do a Q&A, which is my preferred format.
So anyone in Mountain View that would like to ask a question, you're welcome to come over to this microphone. Or you stare Dan and Terry right in the eyes.
Or you can ask from your seat and I'll repeat the question, which is what I do at colleges. But you're already on your way, so come on.
There's also a Google moderator going, and we'll pull some questions from there as well.
Okay. This is my husband. This is my husband. Here's the co-founder of It Gets Better. I'm the co-editor of this book and now outed as my husband. He used to be a private person, no more. Sorry.
I'm Jim Weston. What do you make of the phenomenon that the mainstream media were kind of lukewarm until people like Joel Burns came out, and then that was an acceptable story to tell, and that virality then went mainstream for older people, and although that was a very good effect, could you speak about that?
Yeah, Joel Burns is of course the city council member in Texas who made a video that I think is one of the most viewed up there with the president's and ours and other people's. And there was a tipping point where the project sort of went beyond, the Savage Love readership. the sort of hip, savvy, queer, crazy, and hep cat straight people who read my column. And suddenly, there was Hillary Clinton, there was Joel Burns, there was the president. How did we feel about that? We thought that was great. Because before Joel Burns jumped in, and before Hillary Clinton jumped in, and the president, we had videos from drag queens, and Buck Angel, trans porn star, and there was no request from the White House to delete Buck Angel before the president would jump in to the It Gets Better project. So it wasn't like these mainstream types came because It Gets Better was safe for them. They came because they wanted to get involved, and they linked, the President of the United States linked arms with Buck Angel, the man with a pussy, in this project to reach queer youth. And that is powerful. And so that everyone is represented at the website, from the safest, most mainstream folks on the planet to drag queens and porn stars to people making jokes about their sex lives. I've said, you can jump in whenever you want. I've said from this, one of the early, we had a joke in our video, shall we reenact the day we met, where, the first thing I ever said to Terry was, "You have a pretty mouth." And the first thing he ever said to me was,
So stupid. The better to eat you with.
Thank you. Which we said to each other very ironically. We were aware that I sounded like Deliverance and you sounded like porn. But that was in our video, and some of the first emails we got were from people, high school guidance counselors, saying, this is good, and this is when there were like 50 videos, but you need to edit your video and take that reference to oral sex out, or I can't send kids to this website. And I wrote those people back and said, well, tough shit for you. I'm running this, and I'm a sex advice columnist, and people with pretty mouths eating you is one of the ways it gets better, and kids know what oral sex is. And so really, I think that so many people were so ready to respond to our call that if we hadn't have thought of this, somebody would have and launched it. But because we thought of this, it's been sex positive from the start, and it's been alterna positive from the start. And anybody who's mainstream who wanted to participate had to jump in our pool with us. We didn't have to sanitize us to get their buy-off.
Hi there. It sounds like you've got this amazing breakthrough in reaching these kids, the message going out to them, and it sounds like the messages are coming back to the adults. Do you see any sort of support amongst themselves? One of the things that comes up in your podcast is in some of these communities or schools that a kid only may have, one or two other kids. They may not be able to reach out to them, maybe not even like them.
Right.
So do you see that changing with the technology and stuff, that it's sort of horizontal talking to each other?
Yeah, and there's some horizontal talking to each other going on. And Trevor Project is a great thing where they have moderated forums where kids all over the country, including some who are really isolated, can interact in a safe environment where there's not going to be creepsters jumping in because they're 14-year-olds talking to each other. And so yeah, there's lots of that kind of integration. And you can see on the YouTube comments things flying back and forth. The It Gets Better project doesn't have the resources to create some sort of moderated forum to safely link up teenagers who are actually teenagers. So we're not doing that, but Trevor does that and is genius, and we refer people to Trevor all the time.
But I would say the other kind of cross horizontal pollination of this process has been, as adults, we're for the first time really talking about our experiences in high school ourselves. I would never have known to talk about the bullying that I had as a teenager to anybody else because I just thought nobody else was interested and nobody else would understand.
And what good could come of it.
And what good could come of it. And here we are now, 8 months on, and adults are finally starting to talk to ourselves about the sort of post-traumatic stress that we had as kids, which is really great. And it's empowering for us to be able to open up and talk about these things to ourselves, things that we've kept quiet forever. One story we can tell about that is we had a really good friend of ours who we kind of helped raise him when he was a little kid, and when he was first coming out of the closet. And we knew him, we'd known him for 15 years, and he made a video about the time that he was actually living with us. And we had no idea about the kind of bullying that went on in his life when he was in our house. And to hear his video was heartbreaking, just because he never knew that he could tell even us.
And we didn't share those stories with each other as gay adults, or even in that circumstance where we basically adopted this kid, because what good could we do? Nothing could be done. We couldn't stop it. And so it was just like if Terry told me his bullying story, if I told him mine, it was just kind of wallowing. But what the It Gets Better Project did was it allowed, and YouTube and Google, it allowed adults to share these stories in a way that was very cathartic for them personally, but also constructive for kids who are going through what they had gone through, who are going through it now. And it was shocking for us to watch Jason's video and realize that he was going through that when we knew him. And his perception was that nothing could be done about it, so what good was it to even tell us, his gay uncles, basically, about it. Now we'll be able to do something constructive with all that. Don't go away, stay here with me.
Have there been any teenage suicide related to bullying since your project started?
Yes, there have. There have been other suicides. One of the, a kid in Minnesota recently committed suicide. Just a couple months ago. The It Gets Better Project doesn't have the power to stop suicide. And they're heartbreaking when they happen. And the first thing that happened after he committed suicide was his family denied he was gay and said he didn't commit suicide. He had a heart attack at 16. And that was a really good indication that he wasn't getting the kind of support from his family in this rural area of Minnesota that he would need to get through those years. It's heartbreaking. One of the things we've gotten though from people is we need to not suicidal ideation is a problem, and we don't want to promote the idea that all gay kids are suicidal, or the only way as a LGBT kid you can get any sort of attention or revenge on the people who are bullying you is to commit suicide. And so we haven't, after talking about Billy, after talking about Justin Aberg, we haven't really tried to make too much of a public icons out of kids who are killing themselves, because it's going to actually contribute to the problem. And it's a horrible place to be in. I read all about this kid who's 16 years old who killed himself in Minnesota, and it was heartbreaking, and I wanted to write about it, but I've been speaking to so many people in the field now who advised us not to.
We have a question from another office, from Sean. You were one of the first to call family action groups out as being hate groups and inappropriately being granted the media spotlight. It seemed pretty bold. Have you felt any change in the media climate from calling that out?
Well, the Family Research Council, Concerned Women for America, the Americans for Truth About Homosexuality, which is particularly obsessed with us.
Like in a kind of creepy
way. We're getting curtains. They've all now been labeled hate groups by the Southern Poverty Law Center. So they're now all officially designated hate groups. And whenever you see them mentioned or quoted or invited, a representative of those organizations invited to speak on TV, you should jump online and send an email saying, I can't believe you have a spokesperson from an officially designated hate group on CNN again, and no spokespersons from officially designated racist hate groups or anti-Semitic hate groups would ever be welcomed. We haven't gotten much personal pushback except from Americans for Truth. But we're wary of what they have in, they have it in for us. They want to discredit us personally. And I don't know how quite they can do that, because there's really nothing that we've ever done in our lives that we haven't admitted publicly, much to the consternation of gay parenting organizations. And as far as CNN goes, I sort of famously scolded CNN on CNN for having Tony Perkins on over and over again from the Family Research Council, and called them out very publicly. And then the host said, oh, thank you, goodbye, and ended the interview. And that was discussed everywhere as I had sort of ambushed them and they freaked out and shut me down. And I had actually spoken to a producer and the host before the show and said, I'm going to make this point. And they had me on to make that point. So that wasn't an ambush. And they're aware of this increasingly untenable position. I'm old, I'm 46, and I was a weird 6-year-old once upon a time, and I would watch Firing Line with my dad. at a time when you could still go on television and argue for segregation and against legal interracial marriage and be considered a respectable member of the community, and that could be considered a respectable political point of view. And we reached a tipping point where you couldn't say that on TV anymore. You could think that privately until your prostate exploded, but you couldn't think it on TV out loud. And we're reaching that tipping point on anti-gay hate. We're not there yet.
Here's another one from Ellen. Do you think it was really an upsurge in teen suicides that triggered the recent movement? Or was it an upsurge in reporting and caring and confidence, etc.? Ellen wrote, I know there are other groups that have worked in this area for decades without as much effect.
I don't think there was an upsurge. And we created the It Gets Better project after two, before Tyler Clemente, and it was really his suicide. We were responding to Justin and Billy's suicides. And it was Tyler Clemente's suicide, which was about class, race, privilege, and technology, the intersection of all those things, and sexuality, which is why that became a national story. And then the media went back and said, who else has committed suicide this month? And declared it a spate, a trend, a burst. The issue when it comes to queer youth suicide is so many queer youths who once upon a time committed suicide weren't out to anybody. And so it wasn't known to be a gay or lesbian or bi or trans kid's suicide. Now with so many kids coming out in middle school and high school, even in places where it's not safe to be out, and there are no other peers who are going to have their backs, let alone adults who are going to have their backs. Now when an Asher Brown, 13 years old and living in a shithole small town outside of Houston, kills himself, we know he was gay because he was out. And so I think we're connecting dots in a way now because of how we've changed the world around coming out. So I don't, they say that there's no higher, there is no upsurge. But you know what? Billy, Justin, Asher, Seth, Tyler, Raymond, and there was one other, and I'm Tourette'sing the name. That was too many for a month, even if it didn't represent an upsurge. And if we could have prevented one of those, that would have been terrific.
I have another question from Greg. Aside from encouraging teens that it does indeed get better, has there been any other impact from this movement? Have you seen any change in attitudes from the usual bullies themselves?
I don't know. I'm thinking you might want to jump in. I don't know what to do. I don't know, if we've reached bullies. I think that the awareness the It Gets Better campaign has created has made it much more difficult for schools to ignore the bullying problem and not to address it and not to make the bully the issue as opposed to the queer kid the issue. When Terry was in school, he was very brutally bullied, and when his parents went to the administration...
my mom went to go speak to my counselor, my grade counselor, and my grade counselor said, your son acts that way, talks that way, walks that way, looks that way. There is absolutely nothing we can do to protect your son. He's just going to get bullied. And so you need to tell him to have a stiff upper lip and wear a helmet.
And I think that the It Get Better campaign has created some sort of accountability loop and an awareness that they're being scrutinized. We are, with the money we're raising, coming down on schools. We're pouring, a lot of the money the It Gets Better campaign has raised has gone straight to the ACLU LGBT Youth Project because they come down like 10 tons of shit on the tiniest school in the middle of nowhere when they fail gay students, queer students, the way Terry was failed in his school. So I don't think it's ended bullying, but I do think that the It Gets Better campaign and the press coverage of just the issue over the last 6 months has shifted ideas about who's responsible off the backs of gender nonconforming kids who are the ones who get it the worst. It's the gender nonconforming kids who can't hide, who really suffer, which is not to say that the gender conforming queer kids who can't hide also aren't traumatized by the anti-queer bullying that they witness. They are. We've heard from them. Kids who are not picked on but are terrorized and live in fear of being outed or found out because of what they see happening to the gender nonconforming kids who get picked on. And I was going to say something else, but I forgot what it was. I will just talk for a half an hour if somebody else me.
The question I have is actually similar to that, except what I'm curious about is whether you've gotten any comments from straight kids who aren't necessarily bullied, but are more willing to stand up against bullies with gay or lesbian kids.
Do you want to talk about the GSA at Shadle?
Yeah, I just went back. Dan has always joked that we'd never get invited to a high school or a middle school to speak, and the high school or middle school, of course, that would invite us to speak
would be burnt to the ground the next day.
Yeah, well, either A, would be burnt to the ground the next day, or really doesn't need our help. I mean, a school that would invite us to speak to them is a school that's probably pretty open to begin with. But right after we started the project, I did a little Facebooking search, and I found my school, my high school, had just started a GSA this year, and I was shocked. So just this Tuesday, we went to my old high school 20 years later, the first time I'd been back in 20 years, to speak to their GSA and to speak to the school in a large forum, and it was incredible.
And the GSA this year, when they first put up their posters, they were all ripped down. What that ended up doing was they found the kids, the teacher who is the advisor of the GSA, found out who did it, found those kids who ripped down their posters and thanked them. Because the first GSA meeting ended up getting 70 kids, most of whom were straight, who wanted to stand with their gay peers and wanted their queer peers to know that there were more straight kids in the school on their side than there were anti-gay bullies in the school. So really increasingly the decent straight kids are empowered to speak up and to demonstrate their support for the queer kids in ways that they weren't before. It is now cool to be for the queer kids and on their side. And it is uncool to be the bully and the bigot.
So, okay, this is my big photo op. Okay, thank you. We're going to lose the room in a couple of minutes. Let's all thank Dan and Terry very much.
Thank you all. Yay for you.